This is the context you need to understand the interview with Donald Trump. When he says Europe is weak, he is not just trying to be mean. He is describing a mechanical reality. He looks at the ledger. He sees that for decades, European powers, Germany, France, Italy, they stripped their armies to the bone. They turned their militaries into pension funds. They assumed that war was something that happened in other places, to other people. And the United States allowed this. Why? Because for a long time it was useful. A weak Europe is an obedient Europe. If you pay for their security, you get to dictate their foreign policy. That was the deal. But the world has changed, and this is the part the experts often miss when they analyze these soundbites. The United States is no longer the solitary superpower with infinite money to burn. The United States is looking at a debt of $35–36 trillion. It is looking across the Pacific at China, which is a peer competitor, a real rival. And Washington looks at the map and says, I cannot fight a Cold War in Asia and a hot war in Europe at the same time. So the calculator in Washington has changed. This is not just Trump. If you listen to the Democrats, if you listen to the deep state strategists in the Pentagon, the melody is different, but the lyrics are the same. They all want to pivot to Asia. They all want Europe to carry its own backpack. Trump just says it without the diplomatic perfume. He says they are decaying. Now, this word triggers people. It sounds like he is talking about culture, about society, and maybe he is. But look at the demographics. Look at the economy. Europe has been stagnant for 15 years. They regulate technology instead of inventing it. They rely on old industries. In the eyes of a man like Trump, who views the world entirely through leverage and power, this is decay. He respects strength. He respects the guy who brings chips to the poker table. And right now, Europe is sitting at the table with an empty wallet, asking the American player to spot them a few billion. And you see, the expert in the clip, she makes a very important point. She says Europe cannot wait it out. This was the strategy in the first term, yes? The Europeans thought, okay, this man is a storm. We close the shutters, we hide in the basement, and in 4 years the sun comes out again and we go back to normal. They are realizing now that normal is dead. Even if Trump disappears tomorrow, the structural pressure remains. The American voter is tired of paying for the defense of countries that have free healthcare and 6 weeks of vacation, while the American worker has neither. That political reality does not go away. So look at the panic. You can smell it in Brussels. They are talking now about spending 3.5% of GDP on defense. 3.5%. A few years ago, they struggled to reach 1.5%. Germany had to be dragged kicking and screaming to reach 2%. Why the sudden change? Because fear is the only thing that moves a bureaucracy. They see the war in Ukraine grinding on. They see the Russian machine adapting, churning out shells, drones, missiles. And they look at their own warehouses and see they are empty. They realize that if the American umbrella closes, they are standing in the rain with nothing but a strongly worded letter. This brings us to the Russia connection. There is this narrative that Trump and Putin are friends, that they are aligned. The Kremlin says Trump's view is in line with theirs. People hear this and they think it means conspiracy. I think it is simpler than that. It is about a shared worldview. Putin does not believe in the rules-based international order. He thinks this is a fairy tale told by the West to keep everyone else down. He believes in the 19th century model. Great powers have spheres of influence. The strong do what they can, and the weak suffer what they must. Trump, in his own way, sees the world similarly. He is transactional. He does not care about the moral superiority of the European Union. He cares about who can deliver, who has the leverage. If he looks at Europe and sees a confused group of leaders who cannot agree on a budget, who cannot produce ammunition, who are terrified of their own voters, and then he looks at Putin, who, whatever you think of him, is operating with brutal clarity. Well, Trump is going to deal with the person who can actually sign the contract. This is why he calls them weak. In negotiation, you do not respect the side that needs you more than you need them. So what happens next? What is the scenario? We are seeing the end of the post-war order. For 70 years, the deal was simple. America leads, Europe follows, and everyone gets rich. Now we are entering a world of hard choices. Europe is being forced to grow up, and growing up is painful. It means you have to pay your own bills. It means you have to make unpopular decisions. You will see European leaders, the same ones Trump calls weak, having to go to their populations and say, we must cut social spending, we must build tanks, we must maybe bring back conscription. This will cause massive internal instability. You see it already in France, in Germany. The political center is collapsing. The right is rising, the left is radicalizing. Why? Because the pie is shrinking. The money that used to go to comfort must now go to survival. And Trump knows this. He is squeezing them. He is applying pressure to the wound because he wants them to buy American weapons. He wants them to follow American rules on trade with China, and he wants them to take the burden of Ukraine off his shoulders. It is a shakedown, but from the American perspective, it is a necessary correction. If you are sitting in a European capital today, this is a nightmare. You are caught between a Russian hammer and an American anvil. You cannot trust the East, and you can no longer rely on the West. So the conclusion is this. The insults, the weak, the decaying, the freaked out, these are just noise. Do not get distracted by the rudeness. Focus on the mechanism. The mechanism tells us that the era of the free ride is over. Europe has a choice. It can unite, militarize, and become a serious pole of power in a multipolar world, which is expensive and dangerous. Or it can fragment, squabble, and become a museum where tourists come to look at the ruins of a great civilization. Trump is betting on the museum. He thinks they are too tired to fight. He thinks they are decaying. Is he right? In Soviet Union we had a saying, the shortage will be divided among the peasants. Right now, Europe is facing a shortage of security, and we will see very quickly if they have the will to produce it themselves, or if they will simply turn on each other, fighting for the scraps. The mortgage is due, and the landlord is not accepting excuses anymore.